Hey everyone, welcome to another week with Live with Chaley. I am your host, Larry Bailey, and want to thank very much to Ridge Lending Group for sponsoring these weekly events and having all of you folks show up. We meet every Tuesday. I can get this right. Every Tuesday from 4:30 p.m. Or 1:30 p.m. Pacific, and we meet to talk about different topics. Today's topic is something that obviously is near and dear to a lot of people right now, which is finding and preparing for the next purchase or the next investment. And next one beyond that is how to compete and win in a demanding market, wherever that market happens to be for you. And the last part really is remind me why you're sticking to that market as an investor. Obviously, you've got a different set of criteria with regards to what you're looking for and what market would support that. So in any event, thanks everybody for joining. We're just going to let people in. And I think what I'll do is I'll start with finding and preparing your next purchase, right? So one of the big things that we try to do here at Ridge is partner with folks that have inventory. Francis, do you have a question? No? Okay. I'm going to go ahead. Thanks very much for putting yourself on mute. Part of what we see on our side, about 45 right now, I did the math this morning, about 45% of the applications that we take in are TBDs. They're for pre-approvals. So basically what we're doing for about 3.5 to 4 hours out of our 8-hour day is working with clients like yourself and making sure that they're prepared for the next purchase. And part of that preparedness is, of course, understanding what it is that you're looking for and where that is, if there is a geographic restriction. But mostly what we spend most of our time doing is qualifying. When you're looking at an investment property for qualifying, first thing that always comes up is how much cash are we going to be looking at? Because you can find a property if you've got enough cash and you've got revenue on that property, depending on your investment, depending on your history as an investor, you could always go through and depending on how the numbers, buying that property could actually theoretically bring your debt to income ratio down, even for a Fannie Freddie loan. That is something that we do see. Even if the property is not currently occupied, but you've got market rent, again, if depending on your investor resume, that is something that's possible. What typically ends up happening though, what we've seen with the numbers so far this year is when you go through that exercise of getting prepared for that purchase, possibly having your credit run, you're on that clock, right? So you've always heard Chaley talk about the clock, and that's 120 days, literally from the day you run the credit to the day the file has to close. And the downside, of course, is that if you don't close within that 120 days, a new credit report has to be run. A lot of risk with that for qualifying for the mortgage. So what we try to balance here is folks that are looking to get prepared for the next purchase is we want to make sure they're actively working with somebody in the profession of real estate to making sure that they're finding properties for you and that they actually understand what your timing is. What we've also found so far this year is out of all the folks that are going through TBD for us, where we collect your documents, complete an application, run the credit, get you qualified, we see a very steep drop off of folks actually getting in that window of 120 days. And that's part of what that whole certified power buyer program kind of came out to really talk about, is to make sure that you're getting prepared properly for your financing and getting qualified properly for your financing, which is a big step. But while that's happening, you've got to find property. If you can't find property, it's not like it was a waste, but it certainly wasn't the best use of your time and resources in a credit run, because we don't want to see you lose that opportunity. So When I talk to borrowers about what's going on and what their plans are, it's, again, if it's not your full-time job of being a real estate investor, it might become difficult or even frustrating when you go into a demanding market and you're trying to bid against folks that are paying with cash. There's about 5 top name lenders out there that help people buy with cash. And those are primarily on owner occupieds, right? So you're fighting against owner occupieds contracts, you're fighting against cash offers. And even if you had a lender like Ridge Lending Group pre-approve you, literally clear your whole file, we still have to get an appraisal. We still have to get title. We still have to wait, at least 7 days. So, somebody maybe that is a problem if their other offers are, a different level of commitment, especially if it's cash. So what we find is that you want to make sure you're working with an agent, especially if you put your sights on a property. Make sure that you're being very open and honest with the expectations for that property or any others. This isn't really new information, but it's critically important to engage with your real estate professional. So it's no surprise that we've also seen a lot of traction this year moving towards wholesalers. So property wholesalers aggregate properties. They might have different pockets of investors who rehab houses and bring those houses to a through a wholesaler into a turnkey, right? That's how these whole things work. Challenge with that, we've seen this happen a couple of times, unfortunately, very recently, where the appraisals come in significantly under what the expectation is. And again, that doesn't help anybody. Complete waste of time, huge waste of money, and frustrating, and it leads to just typically usually a bad experience. Hopefully that's never happened to you, but I can tell you over the years it has happened to me, but not significantly. But we are seeing some markets kind of flip. We are seeing people try to lead the market with higher prices on properties. So make sure you're doing your due diligence, making sure you're paying attention. If you're not doing any type of automated valuation method or modeling on that property, whether it's through an AVM company or just a lot of homework on yourself, make sure you're looking at the most recent sales for that neighborhood for that property if you plan on using financing. Because an appraiser is going to go out there, and for those that know what I'm talking about, they're going to look in the neighborhood. They're going to look for a comparable property, at least 3, of course, and they're going to justify the value regardless of what you say you're going to pay for it. They're on the hook for what that property is worth, because the lender has to presume risk in the event of foreclosure. That's what it's all about, right? The lender's always planning for how do we mitigate foreclosure, because it's one of the most expensive parts of lending. So kind of recapping here for the last 10 minutes, what we've talked about is making sure that you're of course going through and getting appropriately pre-approved. I can tell you right now, there's folks that complete applications on our website and then poof, they literally don't pick up the phone. They don't return a text. They don't return email. I'm not quite sure why they applied online, because they don't return any calls. But for me, it's always like, I wish you wouldn't have applied. I wish you would have just called or sent an email in through like a scenario request or a quick contact. Say, hey, I'm looking about doing this. How do you guys at Ridge handle this? It's usually the best first step. If you've got a situation and you need us to run those quick numbers to see if the math makes sense, do that. I would say don't apply first. But if you know that you want to get actually pre-approved, you want to have your tax returns reviewed by an underwriter, you want to make sure that you're really prepared as much as possible for your next purchase for financing, you should apply online. It takes literally 10 minutes. The information comes in, one of our dedicated lending specialist will talk to you. If you need to talk to Chaley, she'll get on the phone and work through whatever your situation is. But ultimately, we want to make sure that you're actually working with a real estate professional or a turnkey so that you can get the property aligned wherever that happens to be. And I'll get to that in 1 second. But you want to make sure that you're not pipe dreaming it, meaning that you don't need to have a credit report run to figure out numbers. You just don't. We can pre-qual just like anybody else, even for an investment property. We've got spreadsheets and technology to help develop a plan for you for that. So when you're ready and you've gotten the steps to go through and apply and get pre-approved, get your credit run, get everything qualified, want to make sure you're connected. So that leads me to the next point, which is really just about where you're looking to invest. I'm one of those kind of guys as an investor. I've never gone outside of my comfort zone, which is basically an hour drive. Not everybody feels that way. That's just me. I'm very insecure. I want to make sure that I can go take a look. Yes, I know you can get all kinds of other things. Yes, you can rely upon a property manager. I just haven't gotten that far in real estate investing for myself, but there are plenty of people that go well outside whatever market you're comfortable in, and work with property managers that either Ridge can get you referred to. Again, if you go through a turnkey, it's expected that turnkey will actually become your property manager. That's part of the deal. So if you're comfortable with the house, you got to know right away that that's your property manager. And so if that's going to be a problem, then you might as well not even look. Nancy, you have a question?
Thank you. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Thanks for change. I don't know how to vet a turnkey, and the times that I've looked into turnkey deals, it always seems like the cash flow is rather sparse.
Yeah.
Compared to what I pay. And I mean, would Ridge be helpful to me in identifying reliable turnkeys where it's actually a good deal?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nancy. So first of all, that's what Chaley's literally done her entire career. So it's in terms of real estate investing, like it's kind of it's really a small circle of real estate investors and turnkeys and like the Get Rich Education and the Real Wealth Network and all these folks. This is what they talk about. They know, everybody knows each other. So one of the things that I found that I've watched Chaley do firsthand over the last 6 months that I've worked with her is if somebody's bullshit, she calls them out as bullshit. Like, nope, don't deal with that person. Like she's very solid about knowing who's good to work with, who's not. Now that doesn't mean that every property in that portfolio of available properties is a good fit for you, right? If you're looking for, right, there's 3 different major kinds of investments. If you're looking for appreciation, it's not about cash flow, right? It's just you're looking at a good value. If you're looking about a tax advantage because you want to invest something and it's not necessarily appreciation, but it's depreciation or some other tax advantage, again, not about cash flow. If you're looking for cash flow, maybe today's cash flow isn't so hot, but you have to then look at what is the market doing. I posted a couple articles last week about the art of inflation versus rents rising. It's sad. There's lots of folks, Florida in particular, because I pay attention to that news a little bit more than other places. But folks are getting priced out of their apartments in their homes because the rents have gone up 25% in some places in Florida. And you know what? I feel bad all around, but the reality is that property owner is charging what the market is supporting. And if the person who's living there can't afford it anymore because of whatever their situation is, I honestly feel bad, but it's not the property owner's fault. So one of the other things that I try to focus on is what do the next 5 years look like? right? It'd be awesome to buy a property and it's like cash flowing from day one and you're off to the races. That's great if it happens, but I don't think most people have found that to be the daily routine, right? So you have to look at a place. I'm okay. Again, this is me. I'm talking about me. I'm okay losing money on a monthly basis if I'm buying it for appreciation, long-term cash flow. And I look at what the market is and I'm comfortable with the jobs in the area. I'm comfortable with the housing stock in the area. And I'm comfortable with the economic demographics of the area. If I'm in it for the long run, which to me is at least 10 years, today's money isn't really about that. It's what am I going to do with the money that I'm going to be investing in this property? If I'm not putting it in this one, where else am I going to put it besides losing money in the bank because inflation is outpacing, the 0.005% interest that we're getting. So going back to I think your bigger point, Nancy, was, in terms of finding a trustworthy turnkey or somebody that meshes with what you're looking for. Yeah, I would say, if you need to have a recommendation or you want to talk about that, Shaylee, call in or email in, and Vanna or Carly will get you set up with Shaylee, get her on her calendar and talk. Is that fair?
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Toby asks, in Oregon, the law is changing this summer to no longer have single family residences. Every single family will become a 2-home lot. For cash flow with current rates, I'm looking at a single family residence loan with enough space to add units for what it's worth. That's awesome, Toby. So what you're saying is the entire state is setting zoning laws for lots, for the size of the lot as compared to today? Is that what you're saying? That's pretty,
Yeah, yes, sorry, I was muted. That is what's happening. So there's a lot of opportunity there. I was responding to the Nancy's inquiry. I don't know what market she's looking in, but
I am on the East Coast. I'm open to other markets. Most recently, I've been in Harrisburg market. I sort of like middle-sized towns that have some stability to them, so the jobs don't suddenly flee.
It's and that's right. That's part of the calculus, is trying to figure out. It's great. It's a great house. I always say, where are people going to work? If you don't have a job now, it's been a lot different the last 2 years, right? Folks have been working remotely. So where do you need to live to work? I guess that depends. Microsoft is expanding in Atlanta, right? So that whole area just blew up. But that doesn't mean that, a town should be discounted because there's not a big box somewhere. You have to look. And that's why I look at the economic demographics, if they're available. But Toby, I want to go back to your point, because this is fascinating to me personally. So normally zoning is set locally, right? Again, I don't know all 3,000 counties that are out there, but
yeah,
typically it's set at the county level because, who wants the big bad state telling everybody what to do? So Oregon has the authority to set zoning lot sizes for the entire state. That's fascinating to me.
I think it's fascinating too. And I think the change is happening in July. And I think that there are ways that local municipalities will be able to modify how it gets applied in their county.
Yeah.
I know Bandon, a high-end city on the coast, doesn't allow anyone but family members to live in an ADU.
Okay.
I don't know. And so I don't know actually if the state law would negate restrictions like that. I'm not sure yet. But I'm talking with different municipalities that are like open to this change, and cities like Medford and places where the planning department doesn't typically have, a lot of roadblocks.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you go in and so every single family will become a 2-home lot. So I'm going to put that backwards. So if I had a 1 acre, I don't know what the minimum size is, but let's pretend it's 1 acre. So currently, if the zoning density allows for only 1 dwelling per that acre, what we're saying is that now becomes 2, because I guess they're trying to deal with housing shortage, or do I have that backwards?
They
No,
have to be
that's
talking about new houses. They can't, in retrospect, take single family, are they?
We're talking about
yes.
zoning. Yeah, it's a zoning thing.
Yeah, that is what they're not forcing anybody to add a unit.
Right.
But that's exactly right. And it doesn't, as to my understanding, it doesn't become 2 lots. It's
Right.
1 lot that
It's
is
just
allowed to
density.
have, it's just density.
That's great.
And then, but there are, and it is about addressing the housing shortage. There are, of course, the property setbacks and the different municipality specific requirements for
Yeah,
square
septic, or I
footage.
mean, you've
Yeah,
got a whole
so
bunch of other health and safety things that I'm sure aren't changing, but the density is
exactly. So that still applies. So, I'm not looking at lots that are too small to have a
I think
10-foot
it's very
setback. And
smart.
right.
Very, very smart, Toby. I'm in a township called Hainesport, Burlington County, New Jersey, and I'm in an R1 zoning. So R1 zoning only allows, Nancy, for a single unit. Now we're allowed an accessory unit with full kitchen and everything, as long as there's not an exterior entrance. But if I wanted to put another house on my 3.5 acres here, I'd have to split the lot.
Yeah.
To create a 1 acre lot. It's what I'm used to. But so interestingly enough, on this topic, this is exactly what happened down. I used to live in a place on the Jersey Shore called Long Beach Island. And in certain towns in Long Beach Island, it would normally be a 40 by 100 is considered a lot. So if you bought an 80 by 100, you automatically had 2 lots, Toby. So it was one of those things where they couldn't deny you to split the lot, because as long as you conform to the 40 by 100 minimum standard. But it certainly doesn't allow for multiple unit density. So thanks, Toby. You have a day job, Toby? Come on, you're doing it the wrong way. No, I'm kidding. So great conversation so far, and that now that we're talking about markets, it's not for me necessarily, but when I talk to our clients and I see where they're buying properties versus where they live, it's a very normal thing to go outside of your market as long as you have comfort. And I've spoken with some folks that have bigger portfolios, and I said, does any of this stuff make you uncomfortable? And the general answer is no. It's, you believe in your numbers, you believe in the work that you do to go into before you put an offer on the home. And sometimes you do get a bad property manager. And even if you went through a turnkey, I've never seen these contracts, but there's certainly, I would review the contract to say, listen, if this property manager causes harm, or doesn't fulfill their obligations within the agreement, then I'm sure that there's an ability for you to terminate that relationship and bring in another property manager. But I haven't read the contracts, and I'm sure everyone's different. But it's those kinds of things that as we go into 2022, if you've been paying a little bit of attention to the stuff I've been posting, that information is coming from different sources. I don't write any of it. But these are folks that don't want credit, but they're market information, both from real estate side and also market side. And so, the expectation is that inflation is going to be, is going to be our nasty friend here for a little bit. The Federal Reserve is going to try to do its best to tame it. I don't think anything's, this is Larry Bailey, what the hell do I know? But I don't think anything is going to significantly change until we actually get more supply in. And that comes from like everything. If you haven't looked at it recently, check out how many cargo ships are trapped in China. right now because they can't get into port because of the COVID lockdowns. And I, again, it's going to take a very long time for all that stuff to clear up. If it does, like, I don't know what's going to happen. So we see wages continuing to go up. We see job, I think it was this past week, we are now back to pre-pandemic jobs in terms of people that are working. And I still see every day there's still not enough people to work the open positions that we have. So my vibe on this is if you know, as you're going through and trying to go into a market and trying to be prepared to purchase a home, be sincere about it, set your expectations. And from the folks I've worked with and talked to about this, it's just like buying anything. Make sure you know what number you're looking for and make sure you've got your exact criteria that you're looking for, and don't sway. And if it turns out that you can't find something, maybe you're in the wrong market, maybe your expectations are not aligned with the market that you're looking in. But you should absolutely, if you're in this spot, you definitely want to make sure you're working with a lender. Obviously, I hope it's Ridge Lending, but you're going to want to make sure that you're working with a lender that isn't just jerking you around with telling you you're fine, but not actually reviewing your income and your whole file, from tax returns to whatever else that you have going on in your personal file. We want to make sure it's all cleared up. So does anyone have any questions or comments about, or stories about getting out of your comfort zone and going into different markets? Realize most folks are just kind of listening in, which I appreciate.
I have something to say, Larry. Hey,
Sure.
it's Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi. So to Nancy, my husband is retired military, so we started out in Florida, and we've moved around a bit. So our very first house we purchased in a little town called Riviera Beach in West Palm Beach, Florida. We kept that little rental house as we moved throughout, the military and so forth. But it was just the hardest thing to find a good property manager. So we ended up selling it, I think back in 2004, for something crazy like about maybe 60,000. Now the houses there are like worth 400,000. And you can find property managers now that are just much better. So I would say to you to if we had to do it all over again, we would have held on to that house and just kind of, but we didn't know, the housing bubble was coming.
We all would have held on to our houses, Michelle.
Yeah, yeah, but we have nightmare stories about property management companies, but over the years it has gotten so much better. And so I think if we had held on a little longer, we would have found a decent property manager, to manage that property. So I just say that to say, don't be afraid.
I've been through 4.
Yeah.
Oh my
What have been
Okay.
some of the problems, Nancy? Do you mind sharing?
Like a lot of times they don't have their systems down. Right. They're not keeping adequate records. They don't listen to me when I say I want this improvement or that improvement. They're not accountable. Their system of reporting is off. And I wind up paying like a whole lot of money for something than I ought to be. And I mean, I guess after being like bumped around and bruised, 3 times.
Yeah.
The 4th time I really went in with my, antenna up, and, I thought I identified one who on paper looked great, but I wound up going with a different one who I just on a gut level liked, and it turned out to be the best. It turned
good.
out to be the best relationship. So it's just like anything else, you know, finding the right partner is not easy. And then when you have money involved in it,
It's always tougher.
I mean,
Michelle, thank you very much for sharing your story. Do you share some of the same experiences from Nancy where, you know, it was
Oh, yeah.
just personal thing?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And even now, just where we live now, I'm in South Carolina, and I've gone through a few property managers. Just being here, I'm still having some of the same issues that, you know, I was having down there in Florida. So it's like, but I understand, and I've what you're saying, Nancy, and but Larry, you said earlier about talking with Shaylee about some references. So
Yeah, turnkeys.
yeah, so that's what we're kind of looking toward now, is some of these folks that have been vetted, you know, by the folks who've been in this for a long time and have actually, you know, gotten good reviews or bad reviews or whatever. And so we have other people now that we can trust, like Chaley and Ridge Lending and
Thank you.
a couple organizations I have followed that now can point us in the right direction.
yep.
Yeah, I would say, you know, when it comes, some of the things that I've personally found in when I'm working with contractors and property managers and folks that are my agents, right? They're people that I put in charge of accomplishing something. Because I work with technology, I know I'm not the normal kind of guy, but there are free there are free things that you can get to tie folks into transparency and accountability and good stewardship of expectations. One of the easiest things that's out there to use is it's called Trello, TRELLO.com. It's basically a free task management platform. And there are a million and one ways to use that platform. One of the things that you can do is you can require going back to Nancy, what Nancy and Michelle were talking about is, you know, you found somebody, you thought they were doing something, they weren't, they did this when you told them to do that, and it becomes like an email chain or text messages or whatever, right? So with something like Trello, and again, this is just one example, but it's one that's free and a ton of people across the world use this thing. But you can define your property and you can break things up into lists and with specific tasks. And you can attach pictures, you can attach checklists, you can go back and forth on this thing. And so it becomes a very easy, transparent, reliable way to communicate what it is that you expect to have done, by whom. So I found over my time that if I constantly have the same type of problem with the same group of individuals, I don't think the next one I find is honestly going to be any different. So if I know I'm working with folks that are, and again, I'll pick on my dear friend George, who I love to death. He and my wife went to high school. He's a phenomenal framer contractor, like phenomenal. But I wouldn't trust him to build a house because it's just not, like, he's just all over the place. But if I know, if I give him a list and I say, this has got to be done by here, he can follow it. But if I don't do that, I know what's going to happen, and it's not good. It's not good. So my point is that if you're finding that's your biggest strife, is accountability and transparency and follow through and clarity, use a piece of technology like Trello or something else. You can certainly use like a Google Sheet. It gets a little bit tricky with like taking pictures and uploading, which is what I like, because I want to see what's going on if that's what I need somebody to do. But you can go through and ask the person that you're interviewing as a property manager. It's like, hey, it's 5:04 p.m. on May 3rd. If I need to know what's going on with my property, how do you tell me? And make them, and just shut up and make them answer that question. And if you don't like what they say, or they kind of stumble through their words, or if you say, hey, that's awesome, do you mind sharing? Let's do a quick screen share. Let's do a quick Zoom meeting. And you can show me what it is that you're looking at. And you'll sense right away if they're giving you a bunch of smoke and mirrors. So Nancy, thanks for typing that in Trello. Yeah, Trello.com, Eddie. So again, that's just one example. I use something else in my in what I do here professionally for project management called Basecamp. It's another one. That one's not free. So that's why I talk about Trello a lot. But you know, that's certainly something when you're going out of market. Leverage technology, leverage the interview process, and hold people accountable and ask them simple questions, and then honestly shut up and listen to how they answer, and see if how they answer makes you feel good or if it makes you feel uneasy. I think that's great, great feedback. So Michelle and Nancy, thanks for sharing that. Rates are going up. There's absolutely no doubt about that. There was a little bit of hope. I'm going to do an update tomorrow on the community with what's really going on. But it's, you know, rates are still somewhere in the 6s. I don't do rates all day. I know Chelly does. But again, that gets back to Nancy, your point about cash flow. It was much easier to do cash flow when they were like 4 something. It's a little bit different. It's a few $100 different, which could eat up everything.
Well, I mean, I don't see what's wrong with wanting cash flow and appreciation.
Sure, why not?
Enough, and they cash flow. They don't cash flow extravagantly, but enough.
Yeah.
So that you're meeting the expenses and have a little left over, and then down the road you sell it and it's better. It's a better price. So,
Usually. I mean, historically, it's nice. Doesn't always go that way, but sometimes it's nice when it does.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions, any comments, concerns? Is the material in the community okay? Like I know it's not someplace you go to every day. It's not meant for that, but are there things on there that we could do to improve any information sharing that folks that are coming to today would like to see?
I appreciate the articles. Yeah, they very informative.
They're not too technical, Michelle?
Oh, no, because as soon as, and I'm glad that you just posted and it pops up on my email, because I get a chance to go ahead and read it and move on to something else. But it's, yeah, they're great. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, it's, you know, it's, I try to, honestly, I try to stay away from all the crap that talks about rates, because it's, you know, if it's not,
it's a mirage.
yeah, it's always ongoing. And again, for those of us that are older than 25, like we all remember how high rates were. Yes, they're going up, but you know, I try to stay away from that exact conversation, more so about what's going on, so you can plan accordingly, right? So you can get to know. Eddie, we're probably never going to go into New York, to be quite blunt. New York is a very tough market to do business in. A friend of mine works at a company who operates in New York, and New York regulators just asked him for 3 years of every single audit trail log of their loan system that they use. It's called Encompass, but literally 3 years worth of audit trails for New York to be happy for all their loans. It's somewhere in the 50 million record range. And that's just one example. So sorry. I wish I could help you, but New York's
It's
New York's its own
challenging
thing.
to go in from outside. Maybe if you develop relationships in the market.
For New York?
Yeah, I mean.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can always buy. I mean, again, it's not like, I mean, there's plenty of business in New York, the entire state. It's just, as a lender, New York is very, very tough regulatory, you know, from a regulatory perspective. It's a tough place to do business. I didn't mean it any other way. I just meant from as a lender. That's the reason why Ridge and Geneva would never, well, have no plans to go into New York anytime soon. Or Vermont or North Dakota or Alaska. I know it is sad. Sorry, Eddie. If I know somebody up there, if you need a good referral, let me know. And I've been lending since 93, so I know a few people in New York. That's the way it goes. Any other questions, comments? Are these good? Are these good every week? Is it too much? Should we go to every other week, or every week's okay? And Donna's like, yep, okay. Everybody else is like, yep, okay. Wait, what's wrong with Alaska? Steve, nothing's wrong with Alaska. What's that, Denise? Sorry, I talked
No,
over
I
you.
just wanted to say I appreciate the sessions. No, it's awesome. I appreciate everything that you guys are doing with the articles and the sessions. I'm learning a lot.
Good.
And it also, I think, helps us, to know that you all are thinking about us by giving us this content. So thank you.
Yeah, I try to, I turned 50 this year, or this past birthday, so I'll be 51 this year. But I try to think back to my 20-something-year-old, and I think about all the idiotic things I did. And so I try to speak to the mistakes that I've made and lessons I've learned, because that's how we all kind of learn from each other. So I do that here on the lending side to try to help borrowers, because I think it's important. I think it's not about, and it's what the character of Ridge is all about. I know it sounds mushy or corny, but honestly, Chaley and I are like complete lockstep on education first. Relationships come from making sure that education is shared. And we're ready, there's 46 states out of 50 that we can help. I don't know what the deal is with Alaska, Steve. I have no idea. I don't know. Corny is underrated, yeah, I guess. So part of the other thing that I do all day is I help administrators across the lending side work in this platform called Encompass, and how to run mortgage companies more efficiently. That's kind of one of my side jobs. So I'm very passionate about making sure what you do is understood, unless you're quitting tomorrow, right? Unless you're dying tomorrow, you're going to come back tomorrow. So, try to do it the right way. It's unusual to have education from a lender. Yeah, I know, Nancy. I agree. Even back in 2003, when rates were really hot at like 6.5, I was the guy I was like, that deal doesn't make sense for you. Like, don't do this deal. It doesn't make sense. And don't let anybody else. So on that topic, I will say, because we don't talk about this a lot, but if you're, sometimes Ridge isn't the best fit for you, but if you're our client and you want us to review somebody else's deal they're giving you, please send it over. Like, this is a community kind of a thing. So, don't feel like you can't tell us what you're getting from somewhere else, because sometimes companies will literally give away their money for free. Like, no joke, they'll literally give their money away for free. And if you can time that just right and that works out for you, God bless. So, for anybody listening to this live today or on a podcast or whatever, if you want us to review somebody else's loan estimate to see if it's the right deal, especially if they're offering to lock it for you, we'll tell you. We'll tell you if it's a great deal or if there's something wrong. So please don't miss that opportunity. We depend on lenders. Good. Yeah, and that's what I try to do. It's not that with lending in mortgages, it doesn't ever get taught. My younger daughter, who's actually on here, she's Anna. She does all of our marketing. Like, so if you go on Instagram and you go on Facebook and other stuff, like, that's her. She's doing all our promotion and stuff. But she's like, their generation, the young mid-20s don't know a damn thing about mortgages because nobody's teaching them. I don't know if you guys caught this in Florida. I think it was Florida. They just passed a law recently to force high schools to have a financial literacy course.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody, and I'm on LinkedIn. I have a ton of people on LinkedIn. Yeah. So Steve, so I'm going to call you out. So Steve, it sounds cool, But does it really take the state legislature to create a law to force a school district to think that a financial literacy course is a good idea? Like, that's what stood out to me. It's like, we're going to force you to learn how to balance a checkbook. It's like, well, no, we should just do that. Like, we're going to force you to learn how to go out and get a credit card from a store when you're 18. So by the time you turn 21, you have credit established. We're going to, all this crap. So that's what we try to do is always, I try to demystify the things. So if you have any questions at all in the community about any financial topic, information, education, that's one of my passions. So if I can help you figure something out, let me know. Yay.
Larry, I just have to say something about what you just said about the financial literacy. So I just retired last year from teaching 35 years of high school math. And you would be surprised. And I taught seniors, juniors and seniors, but mostly seniors. You'd be surprised the lack of financial literacy that the kids have. And, the students are allowed to go for lunch. And one day I had a student, his name was Corey. Corey came back with his lunch bag from Chick-fil-A. They love Chick-fil-A. So he spent about $8. I said, Corey, think about it. I said, you spent $8 a day. How much is that a week? Of course, he said 40. I said, just think about how much money you're spending.
Keep going.
I need you to go multiply that by 180 days. But I'll tell you, and I'm not kidding you, the following week, he came back and he said, I thought about what you said and I'm not going to do it anymore. And he stopped.
And that's something.
He really did. Yeah. So we really need these legislators to push the financial literacy. And we need it in South Carolina. They about 10 years ago, it was kind of going that direction, and then somebody pulled the plug on it. So
yeah, and that's kind of, and it's funny, you were a math teacher. So that my grandmother was an English teacher in Tampa for like 80,000 years. And so, I had teaching in my blood. I got into mortgage too young. So I started making too much money for teaching. And I could never figure out how to get back. But my point is that if the parent, and again, this is me getting on the soapbox, right? So if the community recognizes that this is something that's important, that was kind of my feedback, was if we all say we should do this, and if it doesn't happen, it's usually because people can't figure it out, or they can't commit to the idea because they can't develop it, or to get a new course in a school curriculum. I have no idea. I mean, you know what that's like, Michelle, for 35 years. Like, it's a big deal to get something moved. So maybe that's the reason why it requires state legislation, because of the educational process and all that stuff. And again, if that's the answer, I'm shutting up. So is that the case? You need like the state to figure out the educational curriculum?
Oh yeah, they
okay.
Yeah, we have, well, in our state, we have an education oversight committee up under they're not even political, but everything goes back to the legislators to approve. So it's sad.
So that's why, that's the reason why it was a big deal, because apparently Florida got it done and other states, maybe like South Carolina, didn't.
Right.
Okay.
There's a company called NGPF. It stands for Next Gen Personal Finance. This is a nonprofit group that is trying to push legislation through every single state to mandate this. And so they have managed to get it done in just a couple states, but they've been on this push now for like the last 5 years. And slowly but surely, it's gaining some traction. So if you all ever hear of it, or if you ever go to their website, NGF, Next Gen, ngpf.com or .org, I think it is. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful financial literacy information for students. But it can be used at home as well, with families. So
Well, going back to so when Anna and I were talking, she's like, Dad, you need to create a mortgage for dummies, because nobody knows anything about mortgages.
that's right.
And it's .org. Steve, thanks very much. So on that topic, if there is anything that I can do to help educate you or someone else that just in the process of lending or calculating something or budgeting, those kinds of things. Again, that's one of the things we're here for. So be more than glad to help. Yeah, Steve, I'm going to check it out after the call. I'll put that in the show notes so we can get to it. Thank you, Michelle, for bringing that up and sharing that with us. And I'm glad we talked about it. Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for being a teacher for 35 years. And I'm sure you impacted more people than you know.
I hope so.
That's right. That's the thing. All we can do is hope. So if there's nothing else, is there anything else? Last call. All right. Well, we're going to call it for today. Thanks again, everybody, for coming to another Live with Chaley event, even though it's just me, Larry Bailey. Chaley's here in spirit and is always ready to help. If you need anything, you can always reach out 855-74-RIDGE or info@ridgelendinggroup.com. Thanks everybody for coming today. We'll get this replay up on the community ASAP, and have a wonderful rest of your day, and good luck out there real estate investing. Let us know how we can help you.
Okay.
See you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.